What is up? It is FIFA World Cup Draw Day, and it's Dan Riccio here for a live stream across the Nation Network YouTube channel. And what a day it is. 48 teams will congregate across the U.S., Canada, and Mexico this summer, and today is the day where a lot of that gets decided. You know, I don't like to make too much of Draw Day, but realistically, Draw Day is where a lot of teams chart their path towards World Cup glory, where you might find the sleeper, the underdog that is available to go on a big run because they got the easier end of the draw. So a lot does get decided today, and we're going to find out for Canada, especially here up north of the border, what that is going to look like. Canada is embarking on their third World Cup. First, obviously, on home soil, and still looking, on the men's side at least, for their first victory. We've got a pretty good show lined up. We're going to have some guests along the way joining us and discussing World Cup storylines, what we should be looking for, what teams are the favorites, and how things are shaping up for Canada as things go along. We do know that Canada is going to be in Group B. That's already been decided. Mexico is Group A, and they will open the World Cup at the Estadio Azteca on June 11th. Canada and the U.S. will both play on June 12th. Canada at BMO Field, the U.S. at SoFi Stadium. If you are joining in on the YouTube chat, would love to hear from you. I'll try to get to as many of your comments as we possibly can. And with 48 teams, this being the first 48-team World Cup, there's going to be some new nations that you might be surprised are making it to their first World Cup, but there's still an incredible amount of talent throughout the four pots. We don't even know all of the teams that are going to make it to the World Cup as well, because there's obviously still some playoffs that need to go through. 4 teams from UEFA still have to be decided, and there are another 2 teams that will be decided through the Interconfederation playoff as well. And those playoffs are kind of big because they will decide a lot of what is going to happen in Group B or Group D, the pot, the fourth pot there, that will kind of decide where the group of death ends up being, right? Because we always know there's going to be a group of death, and the one that we're all looking at, and the one that is sported on my jacket here, Italy, who have not made a World Cup since 2010, but will have to qualify through a playoff, and if that happens, they will be one of those teams in Pot D. You look at all of those European nations there. You got Ukraine, Sweden, Poland, Turkey, who's got a really good squad, could qualify there, and Denmark, who's been a World Cup staple team as well, that could all qualify through the playoff, and that means there's going to be some tremendous depth that teams are going to have to deal with when it comes to how things get drawn out of Pot D. So we do have a lot of questions that we hope to get coming through here as time goes along, and you know, I always kind of look at this and wonder how things are going to play out for each team. And for a Canadian, looking for a Canadian team to have success on home soil, the biggest thing here today is you want a favorable draw. Now, I know Canadian national team matches for the men's squad, whether it's played in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver, anywhere it's played, there's always a mixture, right? It's not a full home support crowd. You will get some of the migrants that populate this country and have done great work to add to this country, but they tend to cheer for their own side, whether it's been Ecuador or Panama, Honduras, always a mixture of fans, and that could play a factor for some of Canada's home matches as well as things go on here. So something to keep in mind for the Canadians. I want to talk about what a great group looks like for Canada, what a bad group looks like for Canada. We do have a question from Gordy Locke on Twitter that we'll get to in just a few moments. But do want to welcome in to the program a friend, longtime friend, Italian football journalist Nima is joining us here on Off the Roster in this World Cup live stream. Nima, how you doing, man? It's good to see you. Italian journalist, broadcaster, and podcast host Nima Tavallaey. Thanks for this, Nima. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to be with you. Long time no speak. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Nima, and we're both wearing Italian colors here now. So the team that we are actually showing off on this broadcast right now isn't actually even punched their ticket to the World Cup just yet, but obviously the Italians, always thought of well across the world. But when you look at this draw and you see how Italy could play a factor out of Group D, or out of the fourth pot, do you think that Italy is going to come up short again? This is a team that's very popular and obviously has a lot of eyeballs on it as they embark on the playoff come March.
Well, Italy has to first get to the World Cup. That's the first thing.
Yes.
I mean, it's the very notion that Italy has missed two World Cups in a row is bizarre. And if you couple in the fact that in between those, sandwiched in between those, is a European Championship win where Italy were undefeated for 2 years, 36 games if I remember correctly, under Roberto Mancini, playing fantastic football with a world-class roster pretty much in every position except for maybe the striker role. They were, to go from that and to sandwich missing one World Cup, winning the Euros, then missing the next World Cup as European champions, it feels strange. It feels really bizarre, because the manner in which those two misses happened were completely separate, the worlds apart. One was under Ventura with a really, really bad team. And the other one was under Mancini as rate just months earlier, just 1 month, 2 months earlier, they had won the Euros, being the best team in the tournament. And as I said, unbeaten for almost 2 years. So, one was down to quality and poor management. This was more down to stupid mistakes and missing penalties. Jorginho and his stupid hop skip penalties, which I think is the bane of my existence. I despise those penalties. He missed a couple
yeah.
in that qualifiers. So that's why they didn't make it. Now, this time around, it's completely different because the Spalletti, Mancini resigned. Spalletti came in. He couldn't get this team going. The Euros were a disaster. Gattuso's come in, and he's been here for almost 6-7 months. And we still don't know the identity of this team. We still don't know the formation. We don't know anything. And this is worrying. The qualitatively on paper, Italy should not be destroyed by Norway across 2 games, 7-1, 4-1 at home at the San Siro. I think it was Italy's first loss ever in the World Cup qualifiers at home, which is just astonishing. But the problem is that there is no identity, there is no structure. We don't and they've changed managers twice, and we still don't know, and that's a big problem. But having said that, Northern Ireland at home, Italy should have no problems with that. And then it's either Bosnia or Wales away. And Bosnia are in a situation where they're kind of, they're in between generations. Dzeko is kind of towards the end of his glorious career. They're bringing in more younger players that maybe not at their peak or not at their absolute top just yet. And then you have Wales, which is just filled with Premier League high-intensity players, maybe not the best in the world. They don't have a superstar like Gareth Bale but in their team. But at home in Cardiff, in front of 75,000, they have beaten Italy before. And they've beaten Italy in a Euro. If I remember correctly, it was a European qualifier under Trapattoni with Gattuso on the pitch. I mean, that was when Italy was at their absolute best. And Gattuso was substituted on and then substituted off in that game, which they won 2-1, Wales. So Wales at home, Bellamy scoring the winner. Wales at home is no easy feat at all, especially in front of that crowd. But having said that, we're not talking about Spain here. We're talking about Wales, and Italy has to snap out of this national team Azzurri trauma that has been plaguing them now for, well, almost 8 years.
It is maybe the team in the playoffs that a lot of people are focused on is the Italian team. Now, when we look at the top of the draw, Nima, Argentina coming off a World Cup victory. There was some news from Lionel Messi that maybe he hasn't decided if he's going to play for sure or not in the 2026 World Cup, which was interesting over the weekend. But I look at Argentina again as a favorite here. Obviously, Spain, led by the teenager Lamine Yamal, is going to factor in big time after their European Championship win. And I think France has to be looked at quite closely too, with maybe the most talented and best depth of any squad coming up in this tournament. Who are the absolute true favorites for you as we look ahead to the summer?
I mean, you look at Spain and France, and you really can't go past though them being the main favourites. I do think that England and Germany, to a lesser extent, are also thereabouts. But I think France and Spain are just in a league of their own. I think qualitatively, no one comes close to them. Um, I think we saw also in the Euros, and we've seen with Lamine Yamal with Barcelona, like when he's focused and he's focused on a target, he's unstoppable. He is the best player in the world. I don't care who they give that Mickey Mouse Tin Pot Ballon d'Or award to. He is the best player in the world. There's no doubt about that. But they are the clear favourites. And then you have England with Thomas Tuchel in charge, and then you look at the quality and Harry Kane this season, how good he's been, and then you look at the attacking firepower that England have. Some question marks can be said about maybe the defense, that there's no, that they don't have as good defenders as they have midfielders and attackers going forward. But I do think that Thomas Tuchel is a good enough coach to be able to mitigate that. I mean, winning the Champions League with that Chelsea side is unbelievable. They were hardly world beaters or the best team or anything like that when they won it, and they still won it, and he won it. So he is a good tactician. He will get the most out of them. And then Germany, who we don't know where we've got, but I think we're due Germany a good run from Germany. I mean, this is one of the biggest football nations in the world historically, and also the quality they have is unmistakable as well. Nagelsmann is an exciting young coach. But yeah, I mean, and then you have Carlo Ancelotti, who is the best coach of all of them at the tournament with Brazil. And Brazil haven't been close to winning it for a long time, and we know that every 20 odd so years Brazil win that tournament. So yeah, it's an interesting one. But I think the main favourites are without a doubt Spain and France.
Now, you cover Italian football, and one of the host nations is the U.S., and you see a lot of American players have populated the Italian Serie A these days. Christian Pulisic has been on fire with AC Milan. We know Weston McKennie has been a big part of Juventus for many years. What do you see amongst those American talents, and can the U.S. have some success on home soil with some of the talents they have plying their trade in Italy?
Look, I think there's no doubt that the Americans, the US soccer has never been as good as it is right now. I think qualitatively, the fact that you've got 48 teams or however many it is, that also makes it somewhat easier to reach the knockout stages. And also pushed on by the home fans. We always know that the team playing on home soil always overperforms and does really well. I think that there is a chance that I see, if the draw is kind as well, which I'm sure we'll know in a couple of hours or so once this little charade that they've got going is finished. If the draw is kind to them, yeah, I mean, they could get on a path and reach a quarterfinal for sure. I think they absolutely have the quality and the I wouldn't put it past them, to put it that way. But I mean, it depends on the draw as well, and how that ends and what pathway you
have. We are just seeing during the draw, Prime Minister Mark Carney has just picked his own team out of a basket of balls. Canada will be in Group B to start this tournament. The U.S. will be in Group D, and Mexico will lead off the tournament in Group A as the opening match will be played at the Estadio Azteca. This being a Canadian show here, Nima, I have to ask you about Jonathan David with Juventus, who scored recently, has maybe had a tough start to life in Italy with Juventus, to say the least, but maybe finding his game and maybe finding some more minutes with Dusan Vlahovic recently getting injured for Juventus.
Yeah, look, I think Jonathan David was one of those players. Is a player. He's a goal scorer, and I think I think he will eventually come good for Juve. I think the problem has been that he came to a club that's been so grossly mismanaged for such a long time. They went from, look at the number of coaches that they've had recently, from Allegri to Tudor, Allegri to then, you had Thiago Motta, and then you have Tudor, and it's just been and now of course Luciano Spalletti. And then you look at how much money they've spent when they've actually spent on transfer fees, like Teun Koopmeiners, Douglas Luiz, and so on, and they've all not been good. And then of course Openda this season. It's not easy for a player to come to a big club where there's lots of big club expectations, but the structure just isn't there. And I think he's been suffering from that. And I think when you look at how he's played, it's also not looked good, because he looks like a player that's very, very hampered. His confidence is hampered, not physically, but I mean more like a mental element. He looks like a player who's not, especially a striker. You can tell when a striker is at the peak of his confidence, and Jonathan David is no exception. And I think he's been it's been difficult for him to come to Juve, to a new league. It was always going to be difficult, but then to come to Juve that really is really poorly constructed, and for him to kind of try to be pushed, come into that environment and to try to deliver immediately, it's not been easy. I still think that there is a player there. I've always thought he's a natural goal scorer, and natural goal scorers, there are not that many of them flying about. I think if he can just continue, now that Vlahovic is injured and will be out for at least 3-4 months, 2-3 months, he should be able to get more chances. And then it kind of comes down to him to be, okay, to start delivering and start to build some confidence and to start to be useful. I think Spalletti can really help him in this regard. I think the way that Spalletti will want to play will help him as well, in the sense that he will play with, they're going to build around Kenan Yildiz. They're going to have Chico Conceição. These are players. Jegrova is another exciting young player. They're going to try to build so that he should be in the area and finish off the chances, which I think is what is his strength. He is a natural goal scorer, like I said, but it's been a very difficult start to his Juventus tenure, for sure. I mean, the goal contributions are not good. He's not played well. He's looked very, very out of sorts, and not physically, but more mentally. Like, his confidence is impacted. But you know how it is with strikers. They get 1 or 2 goals in, and then they're on a, then they get over that stuff, and then they score for fun. And especially the natural goal scorers, and Jonathan David is one.
Nima, I appreciate the time, as always. For those watching and viewing, you can follow Nima with the Italian Football Podcast, a football journalist. We always appreciate your time, Nima. Thanks for this. Good to see you.
It's good to see you guys, and enjoy the World Cup, which is in your neck of the woods. I know how we have many listeners in Canada and lots of Canadians like yourself that I've gotten to know, and I know how big this is. So, I hope you guys have a great tournament.
Thanks so much, Nima. That is Nima Tavallaey joining us here on our live stream as the draw is about to get going. At least I think. They've gone through a bunch of stuff. I saw Gianni Infantino taking selfies with the 3 leaders of Canada, Mexico, and the U.S., and we are about to get things going. We did get a question via Twitter from Gordy Locke, who was asking, what would be the worst possible draw for Canada? And, I know this is what people are going to focus on because a good draw can mean great things for Canada and a bad draw can mean, well, bad things for Canada. Remember, this is a country that has gone to 2 World Cups, has made 2 World Cup appearances, and has yet to get a victory. They scored twice in Qatar, but weren't able to find that elusive victory, and maybe should have had it, especially in that first game against Belgium, but it eluded them. And you look at Canada's draw. So obviously being in pot 1 helps Canada tremendously in this tournament. You are a top-seeded team because you are a host nation. In pot 2, every team in pot 2, from Croatia all the way on down to Australia, all of those teams are seeded higher in the FIFA World Rankings comparatively to Canada. Now, Australia would be at 26. Canada is currently at 27. So it's not a chasm that is the big difference. It's a small gap between those two. Australia recently did beat Canada, and I think Australia, for me, would be the best option out of pot 2 for Canada to get. You know, Canada played really well in that match against Australia, just couldn't find the back of the net. Every team here has their challenges, but ultimately, if you're looking at the best option out of pot 2, Australia, for me, would be the best option. If you look at pot 3 is more of who do you want to avoid? And I think you want to avoid Erling Haaland and Norway. They were arguably the best team in UEFA qualifying. Absolutely, as we talked about there with Nima, dominated Italy in the 2 matches that they played against the Italians, winning 7-1. Just ran rampant through their opponents. And you've got guys like Martin Odegaard, you've got obviously Erling Haaland, Alex Sorloth. They've got some star players on Norway, and they can score goals. They're going to cause a lot of teams problems. That is the one team, one of the many teams in pot 3 that you want to avoid. I would say Ivory Coast is in that group as well. Egypt has some really good talent that you might want to avoid out of pot 3. And the sneaky, maybe best option for pot 3 could be Scotland. Now, Scotland has quite a few star players. Scott McTominay was the best player in the Italian league last year, was voted Serie A MVP, and scored 12 goals for Napoli, helping them win a Serie A title. So it's not like Scotland's an easy out. You know, they play good defensively and they have some really good players. But you have to draw one UEFA team. Every group has to have at least one European side. And if you think about what could happen in Group D with some of the playoff participants, Italy, Turkey, Sweden, there's maybe options there that you'd want to avoid comparatively to Scotland. So getting Scotland out of pot 3 might be an ideal scenario for Canada. And then out of pot 4, this is the biggest one, right? Because you'd love to avoid some of the European teams here if you're looking for the very best draw. But pot 4, you would need to probably get one of Jordan or Uzbekistan or Curacao. Actually, they can't have Curacao because they're a CONCACAF team. New Zealand would be a decent one. Jordan or Cabo Verde would be a good draw for Canada as well. But you'd like to avoid, as much as all of Woodbridge would love to have a opening match at BMO Field between Canada and Italy, if you're hoping for Canada's best chance, though I think there's a good argument like Canada might have a better team than Italy right now, given where the Italians are and where they have been over recent years. They have yet to start the draw, as I think the Village people are actually going through it right now. So it's the Village people are performing. That's a real thing. The FIFA World Cup and Canada couldn't, or the U.S. couldn't figure out some, or FIFA couldn't figure out some better options for performances. Got a couple of questions in on the YouTube chat that we want to get through. And Slush, who's been joining, and he's been joining on Off the Roster as well. So shout out to you, Slush. He's got some British and Italian heritage along with him. And as far as the defense for Canada, as Slush is asking about, I think, Canada's defense is maybe the most interesting part of their roster right now. You think of Alphonso Davies being a big part of that. They just patriated Alfie Johnson, who's been really good in the championship recently. He's now a part of the group defensively. But they need Moise Bombito, who's playing with Nice in France, to get healthy. And that may not happen till March or April. Alistair Johnston, who's been an unbelievable development over the years and playing really well with Celtic, that's a guy that you need to get healthy and find form ahead of the World Cup. Jesse Marsh's team has done really well in recent years to develop the defensive posture of the squad, maintaining a high-pressure style, but also maintaining their shape defensively, which can make them very difficult to play against. But they need their best defenders available to them in order to have success defensively. And ultimately, they need to get healthy in order for that to happen. So as Gordy Locke was saying, for a worst-case scenario, I gave you the best-case scenario for Canada, but a worst-case scenario for Canada, I think actually looks like this. It's out of pot 2, maybe Croatia, Morocco, or Colombia. And obviously, Croatia would be the best of those teams. Canada played Croatia in the last World Cup, where famously John Herdman said, F Croatia. How'd that work out for you, John? Not great. Didn't work out great at all. Thanks a lot for that one, John. But Croatia went on to beat Canada. They're number 10 rank in the world. And even though Luka Modric is getting up there in age, they've still got a hell of a squad. Morocco has got an incredible team as well. So at number 11 in the world, that's another one you'd like to avoid. Colombia, they've got Luis Diaz, who's playing incredible with Bayern Munich and enjoying his days away from Liverpool after holding a Premier League title last year. Those would be the top 3 teams out of pot 2 that I would say Canada would hope to avoid. And the reason I say that it's not just strictly Croatia is because of how the pots may end up working out, right? Like, if you get Croatia out of pot 2, then maybe you avoid a European team out of pot 4, which could be helpful. Whereas if you go and it ends up being Canada and let's say Morocco as the first 2 teams in Group B, then you go to pot 3 and it's like, okay, what if you land Norway here? And now that's bad. Now you're developing into this could be a group of death scenario. And then pot 4, you end up with an Italy or a Turkey out of the European squads that qualify through the playoff. And that's just something you would not want to happen for Canada. Joining us now, MLS play-by-play and co-host of Sakaris and Price here on the Nation Network, it is Blake Price himself. Thanks for this, Blake, and we're still awaiting for the draw to begin, but I was just going over some worst-case scenarios for Canada, and I think if you get Norway and let's say an Italy or Turkey out of the fourth pot there, that's probably the worst-case scenario for Canada.
A second ago saying that he does not want to be in the group with Norway. I mean, for fans, seeing a striker like Holland obviously would be a thrill, but that's the debate for a Canadian soccer fan right now is, do I want to see big names, big countries, stars of the game, or do I want a path for Canada to get out of the group that's the easiest? And I think most people are in the latter category. I think most people want to see this team play beyond the group play. So with that in mind, yeah, you want to stay away from some of the European giants, particularly the ones that haven't even qualified yet, of course, down in pot 4.
Yeah, you want, for any nation, whatever team you're cheering for going into the World Cup, you want the easiest draw possible. Don't get too cute about it. It's, you might want to see some other of the big names playing against your team, but the best chance it wins is the best way to look at it, and that's the same for Canada. Now, when it comes to
last time out, Belgium and Croatia seemed a little bit formidable. Like, I honestly think this Canadian team in last World Cup's group, I think they get through. I think they tie or beat Belgium, and I think they can maybe pull off a tie versus Croatia, and I think they win their final game. I think that Canada does just fine, and those are pretty credible nations. So you never know until you're there. I think that there could be a middling route there where you get some teams that have some cachet, as Belgium and Croatia did. But I think this Canadian team would have done pretty good against their group last year. Or last time.
I still have nightmares about the missed penalty against Belgium. It haunts me and will haunt me forever. Now figuring out some of the last spots on the roster. We're watching Vancouver go through this MLS Cup playoff run, and I mean the way Ali Ahmed played there in the conference final. I kind of wonder, is he? I don't know about a lock, but how does Jesse Marsch not have Ali Ahmed, not just on the team, but play a big part as well?
You might have him on the right side is what you might have him. But I mean, Tejan is there. I don't know. I'm talking myself into circles here. I want to see Richie Larea as the left fullback. And that means that you move Alphonso Davies up somehow. I'm going over this as well with the Whitecaps, trying to get Ryan Gauld back into their starting 11 for MLS Cup. And Canada's got the same sort of idea that if you have a healthy Alphonso Davies, are you taking Ali Ahmed and what he's become out of the starting 11? And the answer just might be yes, Dan. He is the least accomplished of the Tejan, Alphonso, and even Richie Larea grouping. He is the least accomplished. He is the less experienced, the youngest guy. So maybe he just does suffer and he's the super sub that comes off the bench, but or maybe he starts one of the three, something to that effect. But we're watching it now in this Major League Soccer run. He's an odd player. The way that he dribbles the ball, it crosses players up so much. And for nations around the world that have not seen Ali Ahmed, not played against him, he comes at them, and I call him the circus giraffe because it's all just limbs and leaning, and you don't know what he's doing, and defenders are helpless. But again, you're not saying yes to that and no to Alphonso Davies. So it's a tough spot for Jesse Marsch, but it's a good problem to have.
Before we let you go, Blake, I know you got to run, but the YouTube comments are asking, are you in a Jumanji room right now? This is
you would not believe. Okay, so I was supposed to be at MLS Cup, folks. This is inside baseball stuff here. I'm in Dawson Creek, British Columbia, calling the Para Cup this week. And it should be a very exciting event. But this hotel, I believe in the honeymoon suite of this hotel. And I have a 4-post bed. I have a jacuzzi lined with mirrors beside me. It is not to be believed. Anyway, yes, good eyes, astute viewers you have here.
Thanks so much for this, Blake. We'll talk soon.
Anytime. Thanks, Dan.
There is Blake Price joining us for the Off the Roster live stream, and it is 1:11 Eastern time. They have still not drawn a single team for this upcoming event. So once they do get it going, I imagine things will run fairly quickly here, because I'm surprised they haven't gotten things started just yet. And from a Canadian perspective, there is a lot to like about the roster. There's a lot to like about what Jesse Marsch has built. There's a lot to like some of the options that Jesse Marsch has available to him. I do wonder about the goal scoring. You've got options with Promise David, Jonathan David as well. Tani Oluwaleshi has really started to come on as well. So you've got options up front, but is any of these players going to be on form once we get to the dance in the summer? That would be a big question of mine. We're going to continue going through some of our guests here, and Paul Stalteri, assistant manager for Toronto FC and 84 caps with Canada will join us coming up after 1:30 as well. But let's welcome in now from SI, MLS reporter Ben Steiner joining us. I believe we have Ben available. Ben, how you doing? All right, we do not have Ben available just yet. I thought I saw him log in on the chat. But yes, we've got a really interesting pot developing for Canada. And now I know, you want the easiest possible draw, and I think there is different ways to go about doing that. Australia is probably the best draw for them out of pot 2 because, look, it's the Socceroos. They don't have Mark Viduka, Harry Kewell of years past, but that's a team Canada can beat. And if you get that out of pot 2, that would be okay. I believe Austria would also be a not so terrible draw. Now, they haven't played in a World Cup since 1998, so getting Austria out of pot 2 would be one of the better options you could get as far as a European team would be concerned. Now, Austria, their most household name is David Alaba, who's not played much over the last couple of years because of a bad knee injury, and he's had some other injuries since. I think he's only played a handful of matches. He's featured in just 18 matches since knee surgery in December of 2023. So that's another option out of pot 2 that could be favorable for Canada. In pot 3, South Africa is ranked 61st in the world. They would be the lowest ranked team in that pot. So that's one you can look for as a potential valuable team for Canada to draw out of pot 3. There are 4 first-time participants in this World Cup. Cabo Verde out of Africa, they are into the dance for the time. Jordan will be making their first appearance as well. Curacao, interestingly enough, was able to qualify out of the CONCACAF region, and so they will be a part of this. Curacao is kind of interesting because of their Dutch connections. They've actually been able to put together good World Baseball teams for the World Baseball Classic, and now they've got 6 Dutch players playing for Curacao, and that's helped them build a stronger squad to help them as part of this first ever 48-team World Cup. And Uzbekistan is also going in for their first in the World Cup, their first appearance in the World Cup. Out of the Interconfederation playoff, Suriname and New Caledonia could be added to the list of first-timers for the upcoming World Cup. Now, I know that is of interest because 48 teams is a lot. Personally, I've always felt that 32 teams is the sweet spot that you want to be in. 32 teams is kind of like the perfect mix, and it felt perfect. When they first went to 32, it was like, okay, yeah, maybe we could have left it at 24. Maybe even we should have left it at 16. But they made the change. And I think over time, 32 became optimal. And so while FIFA's always going to be looking for more games, they're always going to be looking for more opportunities to get more games and more of that money, right? Dammi soldi, as they say in my parents' home country. And I get all that, but it did eventually become incredible theater to have the 32-team World Cup. I think that doesn't change with the 48-team World Cup. Like, you might see Curacao or Jordan, if they get drawn against one of the absolute superpowers, end up struggling and having some tough matches. But Rome wasn't built in a day. Rome wasn't built overnight. It takes time to bring things along, and Is it 2, 3 World Cups before a 48-team field feels right? I'm not sure, but I do know that over time it does actually help the competitiveness of some of the smaller countries, because ultimately those confederations, those national programs, they get money out of participating in the World Cup, and they're able to do with that what they will. But, you would hope that they put it back into the game and into development of the game in grassroots. Slush saying that he used to like Paul Stalteri. I don't know why you wouldn't like Paul Stalteri, who's going to join us hopefully after 1:30. Paul Stalteri, one of our great national team players of years past, won a Bundesliga championship with Werder Bremen well before Alphonso Davies was winning Bundesliga championships with Bayern Munich. And I do think Davies is an interesting part of the whole conversation around Team Canada. Alphonso Davies has still not played a game this season. When did he rip his knee? It was probably like January of last year, and early this year, I guess you would say. And he's still yet to play. He's been back in training, but hasn't played for the national team, hasn't played for Bayern Munich, and that's been part of the issue. Is he hasn't been able to get back on the field and start building his form. You also think before the injury, and Davies, the captain of Team Canada, of course, just wasn't playing his best. Early career Alphonso Davies that burst onto the scene and was crazy in the Champions League, putting up highlight reel moments against Barcelona and the likes. Well, we haven't seen enough of that Alphonso Davies in more recent memory. Then he got the injury. So now you're kind of wondering, what version of Alphonso Davies is Canada going to get through the new year and heading into this World Cup? Well, now joining us, we have him connected. It is Ben Steiner of SI Now, MLS reporter. Thanks for this, Ben. Really appreciate you making the time. They've still not drawn a team, but eventually they will get to drawing teams. I'm told that at some point a team will be drawn here at the eventual World Cup draw. I don't know if Ben can hear us. Oh. We've got Ben, but we can't hear Ben right now. So we're going to try and get the audio sorted out here for Ben. I think he can hear us, but we cannot hear Ben currently, and hoping we can maybe get that sorted. They are just starting to finally introduce some of the celebs that will be drawing teams from the separate pots. Wayne Gretzky, obviously, is representing Canada and has been one of the pot drawers. Shaquille O'Neal, who's about 1,700 feet taller than the kiosk that he is standing in front of. It's actually hilarious. The little table in front of him is like up to his knees because he's Shaq. They couldn't have got well, I guess they needed it to be uniform, but man, he is just a massive human being. And Tom Brady, the final of the bunch to be introduced here for the pot drawers. All right, I think we've got things sorted out, and let's bring him back. Ben Steiner of SI Now joining us, MLS reporter here on our World Cup Draw live stream. And eventually, Ben, we will get to the draw. But the big question is, what are you hoping to see for Canada? What is the best path forward for Team Canada as this draw is about to get started? All right, so still some issues there with Ben Steiner that we will try to get sorted out as time goes on here. Aaron Judge, 3-time AL MVP, is also among those that are drawing some of the balls for the upcoming draw. It's amazing, Canada, U.S., Mexico, and I know the majority of matches will be played across the United States, but they couldn't find anybody from Mexico to represent that they are one of the host countries. But hey, these are just little things that maybe I'm the only one thinking about as we get closer to the draw. Now, when it comes to the top teams, I think France with a bullet should be the favorite. If you're asking me right now on December 5th, France's team, to me, looks the strongest. Now, it's not always up to the strongest team. I don't know if you could just look at who is the strongest team and say that's what is going to end up winning the tournament. As I've said, you need a good draw to really chart your path forward for the tournament, and any one of these teams needs that. And why the draw is so important, they've actually changed a couple of things. So the draw procedure will ensure that Spain and Argentina, who are the top two teams ranked by FIFA, the top two seeds, they get placed in groups whose winners will go to opposite sides of the knockout bracket. It will then put one of the teams ranked 3 and 4, England and France, on one side of the bracket and the other team on the other side of the bracket. This means that England and France, should they win their groups, also could not meet until the final. And neither could meet Spain or Argentina until the semifinals. These restrictions, they might confuse you, but essentially it's a way for FIFA to reward the teams that were successful through World Cup qualifying and other recent tournaments. Argentina, World Cup winners. Spain recently won the European Championship. And if they remain successful through the tournament, they will have a path forward that sees them avoid the other top seeds of the tournament. Now, a lot of this gets decided on how you do in your group, right? Because if you finish second in your group, you don't get that easy peasy path forward. All right, Ben Steiner, we're going to try for a third time. Third time's the charm. Ben Steiner of SI Now joining us here on the Off the Roster live stream for the World Cup draw. Thanks for this, Ben. Do we finally have you?
You finally have me. Switched over to my phone.
Love it.
The computer wasn't working. I guess maybe it's the hotel I'm at in Miami for the Whitecaps at MLS Cup.
Yeah, MLS Cup, a big part of the soccer story here in Canada for this weekend. But let's start on Team Canada here as they're about to get the draw going. And what do you think is an ideal way for things to go here today for Team Canada?
I think in an ideal world, you probably end up with Australia, Scotland, New Zealand as your group opponents. I think that would be a fun group. First of all, you get Commonwealth teams together, and it's a bit of a Commonwealth playoff, and you know that would be a party with that group as well. And then you get three teams that Canada can beat. They need to get a UEFA team, so there's every chance that they get a difficult one, and you don't want a UEFA team to be a pot four. Maybe in Italy, as much as I know you'd love to see that, Canada-Italy in that opening game in Toronto. It's probably not the scenario that Jesse Marsch wants. Italy, Norway, Morocco, that would probably be my group of death. But we're just a few minutes away. Like, you and I will be live reacting to Canada's first opponent when Rio Ferdinand eventually gets this underway. I think Wayne Gretzky's picking some balls. Mark Carney picked one. It's been the Trump show for an hour and a half. But it's certainly an exciting time for Canadian soccer.
Yeah, it is. And that first game at BMO Field is going to be next level, and I do hope it is a more pro Canada squad, crowd than ever. But with the World Cup, you're going to have people from all over the globe congregating to come and see their sides play in the big dance. And for Canada, there's a lot to like about this team right now. How do you feel Jesse Marsch has handled the run-up to the World Cup? Some of the games they've planned, how they've played, and how they've prepared themselves while not having to go through qualifying.
It could be a challenge when you don't go through qualifying. All these teams are playing critical games where they're testing themselves in big moments. And Canada fell in the big moment against Guatemala, of all teams, ranked number 102 at the time in the CONCACAF Gold Cup quarterfinals this summer. That was a disaster. That was the last competitive game that Canada played. And so they've been able to plan friendlies against some of the world's best teams, and they've been able to prepare themselves in that kind of way. So they've played these intense games, and that's critical for the growth of the team, but they've also had a lot of injuries. This is a backline that has not had Moise Bombito and Derek Cornelius the whole time. Alfonso Davies hasn't played since March when he tore his ACL. against the U.S. Alistair Johnston hasn't been on this team. Like, there hasn't been that continuation with this group, and that makes the preparation very difficult, regardless of what Marsh does. If the bodies aren't there, you can only prepare so much.
So the draw has finally started, Ben. We have finally seen our first teams draw in here. Brazil is going into Group C. So obviously, if you're just catching up right now, Mexico is part of Group A. Canada will be in Group B. Brazil, the first team drawn because the three host nations were already given their groups, is into Group C. The U.S. has gotten Group D. They'll start their tournament on June 12th in LA, and now Germany has gone into Group E for this tournament. So, when you think about Canada, and I guess what are the biggest questions for you, Ben, that they still have to answer in the lead up to this World Cup?
I think the biggest questions is how do you break down a low block? Now, we are very close to knowing if they're going to be playing a low block and how good that low block is going to be. Because a pot 4 team hopefully is playing a relative low block against Canada, but maybe one that isn't necessarily too difficult. We're Group F watching the draw, and now the Netherlands just got drawn. So their destiny will be determined with this draw, and it's difficult to say otherwise. But they have shown difficulties in breaking down low blocks with this team. And you need to have the strikers scoring. You don't necessarily have Jonathan David in the best form. He played a good game for Juventus over the last week or so. And then it's a question of that second striker position. Taniela Wasei has been up and down since moving from MLS to La Liga. And then you have an option like Kyle Larin. Like, is he going to find form? He's been the guy next to Jonathan David for so long. And then there's a wild card in Promise David, whether he can play 90 minutes in Jesse Marsh's system. So there's a lot of questions of where the goal is going to come from in this team. And I think we were saying that a while ago, but it's a different issue now.
Yeah, and you're seeing some of the top seeds go through here. The defending champion Argentina has just been selected. They'll go into Group I. Spain, who is the number 1 ranked team going into the tournament, will be into Group H. Ben, really appreciate your time. Sorry about some of the hiccups getting set up, but really appreciate you spending a little bit of time and giving some of your insights here, and enjoy MLS Cup Final.
Of course, it should be a good time, and we'll miss you in Vancouver on the side of things. I know you used to host a Whitecaps show over on Sportsnet.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ben. Yeah, I'll miss Vancouver myself, but going to be supporting Canada from across the country as we get to the World Cup later on this summer. Couple of texts coming in on the YouTube chat as we continue to watch the draw, and we've got Alessandro saying that Shaq doesn't look like he wants to be there. Shaq is he's just towering on that stage. It's kind of insane. Like, Tom Brady is not a small man, and he looks tiny, kind of next to Shaq. France has just been drawn into Group I for the World Cup draw as they go through the top seeds. Portugal is the next group drawn, or next team drawn. They'll go into Group K. Let's bring in legend of Canadian soccer, 84 caps with the national team, assistant manager with Toronto FC, Paul Stalteri, now joining us on the stream. Thanks for this, Paul. How are you?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Doing really well, man. Getting excited, about to see which teams or the first team drawn up against Canada. It's the draw is kind of where dreams are made, right? Because if you get a favorable draw, you can start looking at maybe some possibilities, not just for Canada but for any team coming out of today.
Yeah, it's a vital thing for sure. It's really important that. It's a kind of a catch-22 because you want to against big opponents, but you also want to favorable draw you think you can get possible for Canada. So it's a big day. It's an important one, and so in a matter of minutes, who will we be facing for coming up here?
I know you're with TFC right now as one of the coaches there. Riccio has become a really big part of Team Canada over the years, and has maybe been one of the strongest players amongst all Canadians across the world this year. How is Richie? How have you seen Richie's development through his career? Because he's developed into an incredible player over the last number of years.
Yeah, Richie's had a really strong last stretch of game. I mean, he's been, some would say arguably one of our best players, if not our best player in the last stretch. The international penalties that we just had. But yeah, he started out in a different position when he was younger, and he's playing fullback and put him on the right. You can put him on the left. But really, it's his mindset, it's his mentality, what he brings to the team. He's a warrior on the pitch. He's one of these
Paul,
guys.
we're going to try and reconnect maybe as their stream is just not the strongest right now, so we'll try and maybe reconnect with Canadian legend Paul Stalteri. I know there's a couple of texts coming in on the YouTube chat. What an incredible beard. I mean, that is a man beard, as it's being said in the YouTube chat right now. And, of course, one of our best players really ever in Canadian history. I mean, Paul Stalteri, sort of similarly to Atiba Hutchinson and Craig Forrest, players that didn't get the love as Canadian national team stars playing on the world stage because soccer just wasn't that big of a part of our national conversation. But the beard, absolutely elite from Paul Stalteri, as it's being said in the YouTube chat right now. And I got to say, I'm as a bearded man myself, a little bit envious of what Paul Stalteri had going on there. Richie Laryea is one of Canada's top players. I think how Canada handles this whole thing with Alphonso Davies and how Jesse Marsh tries to make the pieces fit. Because that's one of the things about a national team that is always so tricky is, okay, I have this group of talent, but, maybe we have two left backs or two left wings that are really elite, and we've got to find a way to get them into the lineup at the same time. How do you put the best collection of players on the field, even if it's maybe not the balance you'd love to strike, or maybe you're putting a player in a position that they don't always play in, right, with their club team or wherever they may be plying their trade? To go over some of the pots in the draw so far, as they've started to go through all of the teams, and England finally drawn into Group L. In Group K, it was Portugal, and then, of course, Group J had Argentina, France in Group I, Spain in Group H, Belgium to Group D, Netherlands in F, Germany E, USA Group D, Brazil into Group C, Canada Group B, and Mexico in Group A. Shaq has just drawn the first team out of Pot 2, and it is Korea Republic that has been drawn into Group 2, and now we will see where Korea Republic ends up in Group A with Mexico. So the next team that is going to be drawn here is going to go into Group B with Canada. There's a number of options: Croatia, Morocco, Colombia, Uruguay, Switzerland, Japan, Senegal, Iran, Ecuador, Austria, Australia, and it is Switzerland that goes into Group B with Team Canada. Switzerland, an interesting team here. Obviously, they are pretty much a World Cup staple. They will play in Toronto against Canada. Actually, no, they won't play in Toronto. They'll play one of the two Vancouver games against Canada. They are ranked number 17 in the world, is Switzerland, and they're just, they don't have some of the biggest names on the planet, but they're always just a well-drilled team and always seem to make it into the knockout rounds as well. So Switzerland Not the worst draw. It's sort of in the middle. Because one of the things about getting Switzerland, I talked about this earlier with potentially drawing an Austria out of pot 2 is, well, maybe it helps you avoid a Norway or one of the European playoff teams. We aren't going to be able to reconnect with Paul Stalteri as that connection is just unable to get figured out. But now we do have our chance to really focus in on the draw. Morocco has been drawn into Group C with Brazil. So early stages here for the World Cup draw, but Brazil and Morocco shaping up to potentially be a group of death. I know we're only through the first 2 teams, but Morocco, Brazil, they could still get Norway and Italy in that Group C as well, or Norway and Turkey, maybe Egypt. Actually, they can't get Egypt because that would be an African nation. They already have Morocco. So there's some different combinations out of pot 3 and 4 that could be trouble for the Brazilians, who have and they've really had a tough go about it. Like the Seleção that we've come to expect at on the world stage, it wasn't it. You know, they haven't been able to have that success. The 2014 World Cup, when they got smashed by Germany in the semifinal, I mean, they've never really recovered from that in World Cup stages, at least. So you think about Brazil, they want to obviously have a good tournament, but that team maybe not what it was. And now they have Carlo Ancelotti, maybe one of the best coaches, trying to get them going. Slush, LOL, Brazil and Monaco on the chat. So, yes, that one definitely maybe a tough draw for the Brazilians. Australia has been drawn into Group D with the Americans. So if you're among the red, white, and blue, the Stars and Spangled Banner fans, Australia, a good draw for the U.S. there in Group D. Ecuador's gone into Group E with Germany. So we're looking at that as something that Germany needs to have a good World Cup here. The Netherlands has been drawn with Japan in Group F, and recently just drawn Iran going into Group G with Belgium. Iran is ranked 20th in the world, just a well-drilled team, really tough to break down. And I know a lot of times, you think about World Cups and what wins in a World Cup. Well, obviously, you see me wearing some of this Azzurri blue here. Defense wins in tournaments. If you are tough to score against and you can get games into extra time, get games into shootouts, that's going to help you have success. It's going to help you, as they say, punch above your weight in a tournament. And a lot of times, that's what the underdog stories are built on, being able to stop goals from going into their net. Spain drawing Uruguay into Group H. Spain is the top-seeded team in the tournament with the way that they've been playing lately, and look like they have another golden generation coming along with Lamine Yamal, who is, I don't know, the next Lionel Messi. Do we need to have a next Lionel Messi? But he's a teenager that is dominating with Barcelona, so it's just easy to make that comparison. Senegal drawn into Group I with France, and now into Group J with Argentina. The next team is Austria, who are making their first World Cup appearance since 1998. You've got Marko Arnautovic, Marcel Sabitzer as some of the Austrian players that are with the national team now, and former Vancouver Whitecap Alessandro Schopf is also a big part of that Austrian team. If you're joining us on the YouTube chat, keep the comments coming in as we look to see how you're feeling about the way the draw is going, as we can start to look ahead to pot 3. Canada has drawn Switzerland, which is ranked 17th in the world. And Switzerland is in the UEFA Confederation, which means one more UEFA team can still be drawn with Canada, but you've already got your one European team out of the way. And it's maybe not the worst draw when it comes to your European teams that you could face. Norway is ranked number 29, so they are actually just 2 spots behind Canada, but with the way that they've been playing, they may not be behind Canada very much longer. Closing out the way pot 2 has been drawn, Colombia goes into Group K with Portugal, and Croatia has gone into Group L with England. So we have drawn all of the teams out of pot 2 here for this World Cup draw, and we'll move on to pot 3. The teams in pot 3: Norway, Panama, Egypt, Algeria, Scotland, Paraguay, Tunisia, Ivory Coast, Uzbekistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and South Africa. Norway had an unbelievable qualifying. They didn't lose in qualifying. They dominated everybody. Their goal difference was through the roof, and they beat the Italians 7-1 in the 2 matches. Egypt is another really strong team. Obviously, Mohamed Salah is maybe not playing as well as he had a year ago, but Mohamed Salah is still a player you'd rather avoid if you're a team like Canada. I think that goes without saying. Paraguay is an interesting squad as well. They could have, they used to be a World Cup staple. They've kind of found their way again. Tunisia is a team that will be defensively solid. You'll see a lot of that out of this group here. But in pot 3, knowing that Canada has already drafted one UEFA team into their group, you'd probably like to avoid another UEFA team here. And the one is Norway. Scotland, now that you've already drawn a UEFA team, I think you could avoid Scotland here. That would be ideal for Canada. And maybe getting an Uzbekistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, those would be the optimal teams to draw here for Canada. I think the other team I would like to avoid, or like to see Canada avoid, they cannot get Panama. Panama is a CONCACAF team. Canada cannot draw Panama into their group here out of pot 3. But Ivory Coast is a team that, for me, I'd really like to see Canada avoid, if at all possible. As Cabby joins in on the YouTube stream, England, Croatia is a tough group. It is. So that Group L already has 2 UEFA teams. That one's going to be difficult. Brazil and Morocco, maybe the other one out of the pot 2 draw that looks to be shaping up to be a potential, and I say potential, group of death because they still have an option to have 2 UEFA teams in that Group C, and that could be very difficult. South Africa is going into Group A here to be drawn with Mexico and Korea. So now we look at who will be drawn next for Canada. Canada would love to get an easier draw here for their option. South Africa goes into Group A. That is a great draw for Mexico and Korea right now. No disrespect to the South Africans, but they are the lowest ranked team out of pot 3. So that goes into Group A. For Group B, you're looking at Canada, Switzerland, and Qatar has now been drafted into Group B with Canada and Switzerland. I would have to say that is a successful draw for Canada right now. Now, it could still get weird in pot 4, right? Like those European playoff teams looming in pot 4, but for Qatar to be your option in Group B, that's not bad at all. Now, Canada played, I want to say they played Qatar. It was probably before the Qatari World Cup, actually. They played in September against Qatar. They won that match 2-0. Kyle Larin and Jonathan David scored those 2 goals in that game. I mean, that's eons ago. By the time these two teams play, it's going to be almost a full 4 years, a full World Cup cycle since their last meeting together. But, you know, Qatar, in the lead up to hosting the 2022 World Cup, they definitely have funds and money into developing their side. So that's obviously going to be something that factors in for them here going into this World Cup as well. As far as a national team is concerned, out of this pot, I'd say this is one of the better options for Canada. You know, they're in the Asian Football Confederation, so what this means, you know, you can't draw another team out of the Asian Confederation if you are Canada. So, you know, that's going to take out some of the teams in pot 4, like New Zealand, who also comes out of the Asian Confederation. Now, Jordan, they're out of Africa. Cabo Verde, also out of Africa. Curacao and Haiti, both CONCACAF region teams. So Canada cannot get Curacao and Haiti as 2 of their teams. So you're looking at, for Canada right now, as we focus on the Canadian group, you're looking at potentially Jordan, Cabo Verde, Ghana, and then one of the playoff teams, whether it's from the European or Interconfederation playoff winners. That, to me, is about as good a draw as Canada could go through for now. But we'll have to see if they end up with one of those European teams, and which European team that may be. We'll find out in March. All right, let's run through some of the other groups here and how things are developing in the World Cup draw. So, as mentioned, South Africa went into Group A with Mexico and Korea. Canada getting Qatar as their next opponent. Got Switzerland with them. Paraguay went into Group D. They could not go into Group C with Brazil and Morocco because obviously they are with the CONMEBOL Confederation, cannot play and cannot be drawn into a group with Brazil. In Group E, Ivory Coast was drawn with Germany and Ecuador. Group F has Tunisia drafted in with the Netherlands and Japan. And now going into Group C with Brazil and Morocco is Scotland. So that is, that's not a bad draw for Brazil and Morocco, considering the way things could have gone. With Spain and Uruguay in Group H, it will be Saudi Arabia. In Group G, Belgium is getting Egypt and Iran. So that's no layups so far in that group with Belgium in Group G. Still wondering where Norway, Panama, Algeria, and Uzbekistan are going to get drawn here. That one's going to be interesting. Where Norway ends up, France and Senegal here in Group I, probably hoping Norway does not get drawn here. It will be Algeria, which should create some good storylines going up against France. The 90th minute on the YouTube chat. Good group for Canada so far. Let's not jinx it, guys. We don't want to jinx it. Qatar added to Group B is huge, Cabby. We can agree on that. That one is very big for Canada to get Qatar out of this pot 3. Pot 4 is going to be where everything gets decided for Canada. If you can avoid really any of the playoff teams from Europe, I think Canada will be in a very good spot and really have a ton of potential to advance to the qualifying stages. I mean, pinch me. I don't want to like say that this is a guarantee, but if Canada avoids some of the European qualifiers, European playoff teams, then they will be favored, I would say, to advance into the knockout stages. Like when we see the pro line odds after this, it will say Canada is likely favored to come out of Group B. Uzbekistan going in with Portugal and Colombia. And now the way things are being drawn, Norway and Panama are the only two teams remaining in Pot 3. So actually Norway is going to go into Group I with France and Senegal here, and Panama is going to go into Group L with England and Croatia, because already with two UEFA teams there in Group L, they cannot have another European side. So Panama will go into Group L with England and Croatia, and maybe avoiding a potential group of death. And maybe something that is developing here as far as group of deaths are concerned, there's not really one standout. You know, there's going to be a couple of groups that there's no real layups, I guess you could say, or there's no real super underdog. But as far as a group of death, maybe this is a product of the 48-team World Cup. There isn't anything that's going to stand out as a true group of death the way things are currently going. That'll also depend on how the playoffs turn out, though. All right. They are going into the final pots here. Now, the way that this is going to work, obviously, you can only... So outside of UEFA is the only confederation where two teams from that same confederation, two teams from UEFA, can be in one group. Outside of that, you cannot have a team from the same confederation playing in your group. So Canada cannot have other CONCACAF teams playing in their group. Korea and Japan can't play in the same group. Those kinds of things just can't happen, because this is the way FIFA wants it. They want to spread out the talent. They want to give other teams a chance. They don't want teams from their own confederations knocking out teams from their own confederation, at least until the knockout stage. They can't avoid that with Europe, because Europe obviously populates most of the World Cup squads, and it's unavoidable to make the numbers work. So this is going to be really interesting for Canada in Pot 4, because you look at how Group A is currently situated, and it may depend on what team gets drawn. They may get put into Group B here with Canada. To go through some of the Confederation playoffs as they list off the teams in Pot 4, Alessandro saying on the YouTube chat, France is playing two countries they colonized. That is very true. So that's an interesting tidbit. Always something that comes up in these world tournaments, in these international tournaments. The UEFA Confederation playoffs will go March 26th to March 31st. Playoff A is with Italy, Northern Ireland, Bosnia, Wales. So Italy will play Northern Ireland, Bosnia will play Wales. The winner of those two games play each other in a follow-up matchup, and then the winner of that game goes to the World Cup. So Italy, for example, would have to beat Northern Ireland, and then they would have to beat the winner of Bosnia versus Wales to go into the World Cup. Playoff B featuring Ukraine versus Sweden, and then Poland and Albania. Like, there's four pretty good teams in that playoff right there. Playoff C would have Turkey versus Romania. Turkey's really grown into a really strong side. Kenan Yildiz, if Turkey does make it, look for Kenan Yildiz to be one of the breakout stars of this upcoming World Cup. Slovakia versus Kosovo is the other matchup in Playoff C out of UEFA. And then Denmark versus North Macedonia, who made their World Cup debut in 2022 after they knocked off Italy in the playoff, and Czechia versus Ireland in that final playoff. Ireland with an incredible last kick of the game, tiebreaker against Hungary to advance to the UEFA playoff. Denmark is the team that would be favored to come out of playoff D. They're usually in the World Cup. And the Interconfederation playoff in Mexico, March 26th to the 31st as well. Path A is New Caledonia against Jamaica, and winner plays Congo. The other one is Bolivia, Suriname, and the winner will play Iraq. Wayne Gretzky, one of our national heroes, depending on who you ask. No, he is. I know, but he's trying to refigure out his he's trying to refigure his stance on how things were going there politically over the last little while. His first selection is from UEFA Playoff D. So Denmark, North Macedonia, or Czechia versus Ireland. And they will go into the group with Mexico, South Africa, and Korea. And because there is no restrictions there, they will absolutely go into Group A. So the winner of Playoff D will go into Group A. Now, who will go into Group B with Canada, Qatar, and Switzerland? Wayne Gretzky with the selection. And he is turning it over. It is out of Playoff A, Italy, Northern Ireland, Wales, Bosnia-Herzegovina. Italy is being drawn into Group B with Canada. Something I never thought possible growing up as a child of Italian immigrants in Canada. Italy may end up playing Canada in a World Cup match, and it would be Canada's World Cup opener on June the 12th. I mean, the storylines are incredible. From a Canadian perspective, I don't want this. Who manifested this into existence? Maybe I did, making so many jokes about this today, but of all the things, Italy into Group B with Canada. Vergogna, I would say in Italian. Italy's still got to do it. I mean, they haven't qualified for the last two World Cups, but they are obviously the favorite to come out of that playoff A against Northern Ireland, Bosnia, and Wales. Disaster. I didn't want this. And now Canada will be in a group with Qatar, Switzerland, and the winner of Playoff A, Italy, Northern Ireland, Bosnia, and Wales. Our worst dreams have actualized here for a lot of Canadian soccer fans. The easiest path through has not materialized. They got one of the groups of death in 2022, and while it's not a group of death, Canada, assuming, well, I mean, Bosnia and Wales are also a couple of really good teams, so it's going to be a tough draw for Canada, no matter who comes out of that playoff A. So, as far as things are going now, Group C has and this is crazy. I've totally lost all composure here as Canada has drawn against Italy. 90th minute. Man, that's an insane result. Yes, it very much is. I appreciate you all following along in the YouTube chat and following along with this as things continue on. Group I will get the winner of playoff 2 of the Interconfederation playoff, as that's where things are lining up for France, Senegal, Norway, and the winner of pot 2 in the Interconfederation playoff. So that's Bolivia, Suriname, and they will play Iraq. The winner of Bolivia, Suriname will play Iraq for a chance to play in the World Cup. Cabo Verde is the next team that has been drawn here, and Cabo Verde, also known as Cape Verde in the African region, is going into Group H with Spain, Saudi Arabia, and Uruguay. Your commentary accepted here on the Off the Roster World Cup stream. I can't believe it. Italy going into this group is just madness to me, and I've never hated Wayne Gretzky more in my life. I mean, I know it's not really his fault. I mean, he just picked the ball, but he picked the ball. So it's really the great one's fault. Continuing on, as Wayne Gretzky's next choice is out of playoff C, Turkey, Romania, Slovakia, and Kosovo. And the winner of that playoff C will go into, I believe, pot 4 with the U.S., Paraguay, and Australia. So they'll go into Group D with those 4 squads. And that's what we're looking at here for those teams. Pot 4 is almost done. Jordan, Ghana, New Zealand, and 2 more playoff teams are still available here. Haiti was drawn into Group C with Brazil, Morocco, and Scotland. Group E is with Germany, Curacao, Ivory Coast, and Ecuador. As things continue on, Playoff B, the winner of Playoff B in UEFA will go into Group F with the Netherlands, Japan, and Tunisia. For Canada now, you're looking at this, and there were worse draws out there for Canada. So that ultimately is, I think, the glass half full way that I am going to frame this for myself as a Canadian soccer fan. But if you're trying to prognosticate this and handicap this from a Canadian perspective, Canada will be a underdog against Switzerland in their matchup with Switzerland. They will be a favorite against Qatar. And I think they would probably be, mostly because of Italy's World Cup pedigree, though it hasn't really existed for the last, it's going to be 20 years since they won the World Cup. So the amount of wins that Italy has had since they won the World Cup in an actual World Cup tournament, they don't have that same World Cup pedigree that they did from 2006 and prior. That game, I still believe Italy will be favored against Canada despite their recent struggles. There's also going to be the opening of the tournament for Canada at BMO Field. And as much as I am split screening this or split squatting this with my Italian jacket and Canadian scarf, I would certainly hope that most of BMO Field, you can't stop all Italian fans from getting into BMO Field, but I hope those at Market Lane in Woodbridge or at Corso Italia on St. Clair or Little Italy on College, the huge Italian-Canadian population that exists in Toronto, I would still hope that the red and white is what we cheer on that day if it happens to be an Italian team that gets to the World Cup out of that playoff group later on in 2026 of March. New Zealand, the final team drawn, they go into Group G. So that is the end of the draw. Again, for Canada, it's one that could have been better, but ultimately getting drawn with 2 UEFA teams was not the optimal way for this to go. And now we await to see how things set up. We're going to be watching those playoff matches in March to see who ends up advancing out of playoff Group A. Again, those 4 teams are Italy, Northern Ireland, Bosnia, and Wales. The winner of that playoff will be put into Group B with Canada at the upcoming World Cup. I can't wait for it. I'm definitely going to have a lot more interest in the playoffs now that I know, one, Italy has to go through the playoffs, and two, Italy might end up playing Canada at the World Cup. We'll discuss more of what's the toughest groups, what are the easiest groups, and what Canada's pathway could be. Dwayne De Rosario is going to join us, Canadian legend, on Tuesday for Off the Roster. So we hope you'll join us for that. We'll have more reaction on Monday to the World Cup draw and how things set up as well on Off the Roster. But until then, I'm Dan Riccio. Thanks for sticking along with me, all those in the YouTube chat that have played along with us while we tried to manage through FIFA, taking their long time before actually drawing any teams, but we appreciate you in the chat. We're back with Off the Roster on Monday. We'll talk to you then. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you want more Off the Roster content, make sure to like and hype this video and subscribe to the Nation Network YouTube channel.